Okay, today is February 7th, 2022. It's now 6:35. I call this meeting of the Rennes Pass Independent School District Board of Trustees open. I declare we have a quorum here. Yep. And I'll lead us in the Pledge of Allegiance, and Mr. Rector will lead us in invocation. Please stand. I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
Honor the Texas flag. I pledge allegiance to thee, Texas, one state under God, one and indivisible.
Let us pray. Heavenly Father, we just want to thank you for this day. Thank you, O God, for just watching over us, just being so good and so kind to us. We come praying and asking a special blessings upon this board and our superintendent this evening as we go through this special call meeting. And we ask this in Jesus' name. For his sake we do pray. Amen.
Amen.
Thank you, Mr. Rector.
Yes, sir.
Take this off. Keeps covering up my glasses. Next, public testimony. We don't have anybody here, so we'll just skip over the next thing on the agenda. A presentation by Chase Carlisle of Carlisle Insurance Company concerning property insurance. Mr. Carlisle, welcome.
Hey, thank you. Good evening.
Evening.
Everybody should have a packet. The folder, the web folder looks about like this. There's 4 or 5 documents in there that I do want to go over this evening and explain why we're here and what we're proposing and discussing this evening. The first one is should be a timeline looking document that you have in your packet here, and I'll start here and explain how the property insurance market works. So we refer in the property insurance market as soft markets and hard markets. And the soft markets we refer to as rates are coming down, deductibles are coming down, the carriers are giving us more coverage, it's good for the consumer. In the hardened markets, it's the complete opposite. So we have rates going up, deductibles going up, they're pulling back on coverage, there's less competition in the market, and that ultimately is driving the rates up. And that's where we are today. So if we look at this timeline and we go back to 2016, and you could really go back probably to about 2007, we had been in a soft market for a good 15 years. 2017 changed that all, and we're all aware of what happened in 17 and here locally, but we also did have 2 major storms that year that did transition the market. That year alone, there was $100 billion of losses paid. It was by far the worst, most significant year of insured losses that we had had to date. 2018 was better, but we still had about $26 billion in losses from a couple hurricanes. The state of California, for whatever reason, continues to catch on fire every year. And by 2019, the 2017 claims had all pretty much finalized out. Any suits that were open finalized, and the carriers figured out what their total losses were for that 2017 year. So in 19 is when we saw the market start transitioning to what we refer to as a hardened market. Overnight, we saw deductibles changing, coverages changing, and pricing is going up. Fortunately for the district here, when we were in Harvey, we had written a 3-year policy. Some of y'all may recall that. So we had guaranteed rates for those 3. What was it? A year after we had Harvey. I think Harvey was our 2nd year of that 3-year policy. Was it the 2nd or 1st year?
We signed it in March of 2017. So
Okay. So we were insulated from rate changes for 2 years after Harvey, which was excellent. I mean, made us look like geniuses, right? And it was great because you would have seen immediately rate increases after that. Y'all had about a $20 million loss overall, so it was a very significant loss, as well as your neighbors. And so that was good. But when we were coming off that year, all of a sudden we saw our rates change, our deductibles change. We originally had a flat dollar deductible. Now we had a percentage deductible. Just everything changed. So as we go on here, you'll see this, and this is not news to anybody, but we had a pandemic, obviously. We had a bunch of civil unrest in 2020. instead of insuring the whole district or the whole city, we'll just take 25% of that risk, and we'll let somebody else take the other 75%. We've been with a carrier that has provided us with full limits since day one, since we became your agent here. And that carrier has changed stuff. So they actually came to us this year and said, on a handful of accounts, not just y'all, so don't think they're picking on just you. On Aransas Pass, instead of providing them the full $90 million of coverage, we're only going to give them $25 million this year. You need to go find the other people to fill out the rest of it. So we've actually had to add insurance companies this year to build out that full limits of $92 million of coverage. And the $92 million is basically the culmination of all your buildings and contents that we insure throughout the district. So that's kind of why we're here, how we got here, and ultimately why our price looks the way it does. And I apologize, this is very small to read, but there's a second handout, a white page with a bunch of boxes on it. There's a lot of numbers on there, and again, I apologize it's so small. But the far left column is the 2021 year to the 2022 period, and that's our current coverages right now. So currently, we have a $25,000 AOP. AOP stands for all other perils, so anything other than flood, earthquake, wind and hail. So fire, or runs to the building, everything like that would be $25,000. $25,000 on wind and hail, except for a 3% deductible on named storm. Last year, we insured roughly $90 million in values. We had full limits, meaning we insured the full $90 million of values for a total premium of about $756,000.
Can I ask you, is that
Feel free to stop.
replacement value or?
ma'am.
It is?
Yes,
Okay,
ma'am.
thank you.
If anybody has any questions, I can
Now-
stand up here and ramble all night, so stop me if you have questions.
When it says named storm, are you talking about hurricanes, or are you talking about, like, now they name all the winter storms coming through?
Well, that's a very good point. It is still only applicable to tropical cyclones that are named, so a tropical storm or a hurricane.
Okay.
But that's a very good question, because now they put a name on everything, right? So it's a great question, though. Option one. Option one is, the difference between option 1, 2, and 3 are what we're gonna refer to loss limits. And this is really what we need to talk about and decide tonight. Because if you go to option 4, option 4 would be insuring the full $92 million of values that we've done in the past. That is kind of an apples to apples reflection of what we have, except for the deductible went from a 3% to a 5% named storm deductible. Just for reference, that's a per building deductible, so it's only applicable to the building that's damaged. However, I always like to look at it from a worst case scenario, that we have a Cat 5 come through here, and we have damage at every building, right? A 3% deductible on your values is approximately $2.8 million deductible. A 5% would be $4.6 million. So very, very significantly sized deductible. They're both big, but a 5% is extra big, right?
So you're saying that, but why does it say 1,300,000?
That's your premium. So
Oh,
if
that's a
you-
premium,
if
that's
we
not a
insured-
deductible, okay.
If we bought $92 million of coverage this year with a 5%
That's why we're in
deductible,
special meeting.
the premium is gonna go from $756,000 to $1.3 million
For the year,
for the year.
hopefully.
Yes,
Oh, my gosh,
for the year,
okay.
almost double. So when we look at this, I'm going, we always look at it and go, okay, well, we gotta give the board an option. I mean, nobody has another $700,000 to spend on insurance, right? So that's why we're presenting all these options. I sat down, I guess, a couple of weeks with these two ladies here, and we all decided, hey, we need to call a meeting with the board, and so they understand what's going on and have a discussion about what we want to buy. Option 1, 2, and 3 are effectively a 5% deductible, but they provide you a loss limit. So if you'll see the second line, it says loss limit, and if you scroll over, option 1 would be buying $25 million of coverage. Option 2 would be $50 million, and option 3 would be $75 million. So you may be asking, well, how would we buy $25 million in coverage when we know we have $92 million of assets we're responsible for insuring? Let's just talk about that for a second. There's 2 other pages in that packet. Do you have questions? Do you have questions?
No.
There's these two documents that have red and white colors on them. These are 2 pages out of a catastrophic modeling report that we use, as well as the insurance companies, to figure out what is going to happen to APISD in Cat 1, 2, 3, 4, and 5 software system that the insurance companies take all your billing information, your construction data, the GPS location, et cetera, and they plug it in this software, and it models what these storms will do from a damage aspect to your district. And they gauge their pricing, how much they're gonna charge you based on the 250-year storm. So if you look at the 250-year storm, one of them says a ground-up loss means before deductible, 18 million on the RMS, and on the air model it shows just cost 13 million. Those pretty are accurate in the fact that we saw about a 250-year storm in Harvey, 200 to 500 depending on what you look at, and we know we had about a $19 million loss. So the RMS model at 18.5 million is pretty accurate from what we saw in Harvey. But I'm more of a conservative person, and I said, well, let's look and see what the next one would be, the 500-year storm. That one shows 27 million, and just call it 25 million over there. So those are two tools that we can look at to figure out how much limits can we get away with buying. The other thing we look at is in the industry, the rule of thumb is to buy 25 to 35% of what your total exposures are. Those are 92 million. 10% of that's 9 million. 20% would be 18 million. So just call it 20 to 25 million. So if you bought the industry average, you'd be looking at anywhere between 25 and 35 million of coverage, just for reference. This is a very common concept when you get to the larger districts. For example, this is all public record stuff. We can talk about it. CCISD is one of our clients. They've got 1.6 billion of assets. They buy 400 million of named storm coverage. They couldn't afford to go buy out 1.6 billion of windstorm coverage. Second of all, we couldn't probably put it together with enough carriers to buy that much. It's the city of Corpus Christi does it. Any of these larger entities do these types of things. Brownsville ISD, all these larger, Houston ISD, all of them are buying loss limits such as we're referencing here. And you may wonder, well, why haven't we done this in the past? The reason we hadn't done it in the past is because when we were in that soft market and we were with our current carrier, which is Amherst, Amherst basically looks at these models and says, hey, here's the dollar amount that we need to write that account. We know based on the models, they're not going to have a 90 to 100 million dollar loss. It's just not going to happen because we look at these models and we rely on these models. So we know they may have between a 15 to 25, 30 million dollar loss, which is what the models say, and we're going to charge them this price. So if I would have gone on and say, hey, just give us 25 million, it almost would have been the same price as buying the full 90 million coverage that we had done in the past. But it isn't now because the market has changed. They're trying to reduce their capacity, meaning the amount of risk they have out there, and that's where they come into your district and say, hey, we just want to give them 25 million of coverage right now so that we can allocate that other 75 million to write new accounts that may be in the area. So where am I going with all this? We need tonight to review what we think we would like to buy. Again, option 1, 2, and 3 would be buying a loss limit of 5% deductible. Option 4 would be buying the full limits of coverage like we have in the past at a 5%. And option 5 and 6 are buying 25 million or 50 million at a 3% named storm deductible. I don't know that I can stand up here today and recommend that you buy the full limits anymore based on what I know with the models and the industry standard of the 25 to 35% of your total values. So unless y'all want to do that, that's not something I would recommend. Again, in these hard markets, when we're under these constraints, these are the times that we have to make some concessions and maybe take a little bit more risk in our insurance program.
And that's option 4 that you're saying you don't recommend?
Correct.
Okay. Is this locked in for 3 years once we make a commitment?
They don't do that anymore.
Unfortunately, those went out the window
Oh.
after 2017.
Jeez.
We can't buy 3-year policies anymore. We do on the casualty part, so on the PCAT side, which we're talking $35,000 of your total premium or something, nothing compared to the property, we are locked in on rate guarantees there. Unless the reinsurance goes over 10%, then you as the member have the option to leave that program. So we do have some protection there. Of course, those premiums are lots smaller than the property insurance.
Excuse me, could you explain what's the difference between option 5 and 6 again?
Okay, so 5 is again, these are both 3% named storm deductibles, but 5 would be purchasing a $25 million loss limit, and 6 would be purchasing a $50 million loss limit.
Oh, okay.
Which is overinsured, at that point?
Well, I
From
mean,
what
you
you're
need
right.
to go back and look at the models. The models are saying at the 500-year storm, you're looking anywhere between a 27 to 25 million dollar loss. I think 25 million would be a little bit risky. Just, I mean, I know Harvey was a big storm, but it wasn't a Cat 5, right? I think there's likelihood we could see a larger storm than a Harvey type incident. We know Harvey sustained about 20 million damage. So just being the more conservative person I am, I would lean more towards the $50 million option. Again, I don't see any reason to buy the full limits, and I don't see any reason to buy the 75 million.
Yeah, because it's highly unlikely that every piece of property on this, in the district owns is gonna be destroyed where you have to repair it. 'Cause even after Harvey, like I said, you know, we have $19 million worth of assets and we only had $20 million worth of damage, so.
Yeah, I mean, you're not gonna have a total, if we have a total, we got big problems, right? It's feasible that every roof in the district's damaged. I mean, that's feasible to have that happen, but you're not gonna lose every building.
So does administration have a recommendation?
Up to us.
Financially, what are we looking at financially as far as what can we afford?
Well, I'm gonna start off, we have $797,000 budgeted this year. I increased our budget 10% over what we had in the budget for last year, thinking it'll be okay. And so,
So the 797 is the 10%?
no,
Up.
$797,000 is just what we have in the budget to buy property insurance.
But is it the 10% up rate or no? Is that with the 10% added?
Was the increase from last year.
That's the
It is the
increase
increase.
included
Okay.
over last year's. We had $725,000 budgeted last year. So whatever we buy, we'll have to take the difference out of fund balance this year to make any premium,
That's
whatever
just
you
for the
decide.
premium.
The bare bones option, the cheapest option is obviously option 1. That's only buying 25 million and moving our deductible to a 5% deductible. I mean, that would be like bare bones. This is all we can afford, and we're gonna pray to God we don't need the insurance this year.
Can you tell me the difference? I remember you said it was a 4.6 million on the 5%, but what was it on the 3%?
2.765 or 2.8 million.
2.8.
And again, that's only applicable if you have damage to every building. Shirley, you remember what our deductible was in Harvey?
I'm sorry, the
What was our deductible in Harvey?
1%.
Oh, yeah, that's right. They get
Yeah, it was the dream, yeah.
That's right. Your policy in 1%.
Yeah.
What was the 5% again?
4.6 million. And the way that works, that's just a percentage of your total insured value, so it's just a percentage of the 330,000. When you look at, if we wanted to look at buying the $50 million option, which is probably where I would lean and what I'd recommend doing, the difference between option 2 and option 6, those are both the $50 million loss limits, is a 5% or a 3%. The pricing difference between the two is $143,000. So you're, if you go with option 2 and take the 5%, you would save $143,000, but you're gonna take on about $2 million more in deductible if we had a swimming plan. Again, you can only do what we can do though, so, you know, we know how FEMA works. It's a horrible process, but at the end of the day, hopefully, we would be reimbursed for that deductible.
Well, how I buy my personal insurance is that I try to keep as much money in my pocket, because if I don't use it, if I pay high premiums and we never use it, you gave it to them anyway.
You're right.
If
You're
you
100% right.
keep your premium low, keep what the 243,000 on the side, it's not anywhere near the 2 million, but at least you have, if you're gonna put 2 million into deductible or the deductible, keep it in our pocket, don't give it to them automatically is my business aspect of it, because you will never see it back, and you may not ever have to use it, so
That's how I buy my insurance.
you wanna
too.
keep it in
Take
your own
a high
pocket.
deductible, and I know if I'm gonna have something, the odds are you are not gonna have something, so historically you would save money by doing that.
Yeah.
On your homeowners or your auto policy, unless you're an awful driver or something of that nature, but yeah, you're 100%
And that is the question.
Yeah.
Cheryl,
Sorry.
do we have a $2 million to fund it?
Well, yes.
It's the bare, yeah.
What do we budget as far as deductible?
Right now,
It
we
was-
don't have anything set aside for the deductible now.
I thought you said we had 797.
That's for the
That's
premium,
That's a premium.
not for the
Oh, for the
deductible.
premium,
Oh,
oh.
okay.
Oh,
The
so we don't,
deductible would have to come
When
out of
we-
fund balance. And that's the conversation we've had for months through this entire thing, is that your fund balance needs to be at least 3 months operating cost expenditures and a deductible for, heaven forbid, another catastrophe. And our fund balance,
doesn't meet that objective.
is not there.
No. When Harvey happened, our fund balance was almost $6 million. 1.3 million is what we had to pay in deductible. So, I mean, it hurt me to see it go down, but we were fine. Now it's questionable. I'm thinking in order to meet the deductible, we'd probably have to get loans.
So out of these options, which one would you recommend, Cheryl?
Well, even option one's, we're gonna have to take money out of fund
Couple
balance,
hundred
so,
thousand, yeah.
and, that would go along with what, Edel was saying. I'm not sure, and I have not really made decisions, it's just my thought process after talking to Chase with our values being, so increased, cause it was, I think it's like $67 million back when Harvey happened, and now we've got new buildings and new values. So I'm 25 million, our Harvey total, damages was right at $20 million. So 25 million, that's gonna be pushing it if we had Harvey come through here again. So I believe it would be, like he said, between 25 and 50, probably around 35 million. What really would be the deciding factor is coming up with the deductible. That's like what Edel was saying, do we wait for the deductible to hit us, or do we opt to throw caution to the wind and try to keep our premium down? And do a lot of praying.
And so the deductible, I didn't figure this up, so when you said the deductibles of 3 and 5%, you were figuring that on the total value,
Yes, ma'am.
right? So,
Yeah.
so the deductible on a 3% versus 5% on $25 million damage, right? You would have to pay the deductible off the total.
Yeah,
Deductibles
No matter what,
applicable to the
okay.
building, what the building is insured for,
Oh,
it's
okay.
not a loss.
So it's not
So it's-
just the loss, okay.
No, I mean, and the good part is it's applicable to the building that's affected, so if, if you only had, 2 or 3 buildings that were affected, we only pay deductible based on what the value of those 2 buildings are on our schedule. But again, I always kinda have to talk worst case scenario, like Harvey, where we had pretty much every single building had some damage.
Oh, that's what I was asking, so it's just a deductible based off of the value of the damaged buildings?
Correct.
So we had 20,000, we were covered for 25, we only used 20,000, this is just, so we're paying 5% of 20,000 as for deductible,
The value.
automatically.
That was the 92.
No, it's 5% of the 92.
The
If you
value.
had every building damaged.
Right.
If you had, let's just say we had a building that's valued at $100,000, and that building sustained damage, wind damage to the roof, the 5% would be applicable to the $100,000, because that's what the building is insured for.
Okay.
So it's a per building deductible, only the buildings that are affected. But a worst case scenario, we have every building affected, it's 5% of the 92 million.
Okay.
But in Harvey, we didn't have every building affected, did we?
every building,
Every building was
It's
affected.
touched somehow, all the air conditioning units.
the difference here is that, one, we had only a 1% deductible.
Yes.
Our value was roughly 30 million less than what it is today. If we had a catastrophic where it affected every building, and we had a $25 million policy in place, then we would be underinsured.
Damage to every building. I mean, again, like we talked about Harvey, we pretty much had every building damaged, but the damage was only 20 million. We had a lot of air conditioning units that came off the buildings that created holes then in your roof, right? So that's what we got a hole, and then we had water inside. There was a lot of roof damage, if I recall. You know, some of the normal stuff we always see go first is the light poles, everything outside, right? Bleachers, stuff like that. But we even have significant building damage. I mean, it wasn't little,
Other than
but
AC Blunt, we
Yeah.
gutted that building.
that one was a big one. But, you know, it just depends on the extent of the damage. I mean, it's hard to predict. According to the models, you would have between a 25 and 27 million dollar loss in a 500-year storm. The 250-year storm was between 18 and 21 million dollar loss. And that's basically what Harvey was.
But this current calculation is based on the existing property that we have, because we have a new gym, we have the new restrooms and concession. Those weren't here during Harvey.
You're correct. And that's a very valid point. So when we look at this, maybe these models are a little bit light. Because we did have 30 million less, we had a 20 million dollar loss. We're probably looking closer to 35 million in that same type of storm.
Go ahead.
There's lots of factors you can think of. Well, the new construction, now we have new roofs, we have our air conditioners strapped down. You know, maybe we wouldn't have that type of damage anymore because we have some better buildings now, or, you know, they've been improved since Harvey. You know, all that goes into play.
Okay, Cheryl, can you, give us a scenario, three months out of the budget? And the option one, I think if I'm reading this, I can barely see that. I think it's option one with a premium of
963,304.
and then your 3 months, what leaves us in the fund balance that we could possibly guess how much we'd have to get a loan for, if we had to get a loan to make the deductible?
Well, the 3%, the $2.7 million would be the deductible on the,
It's 5%.
on the 3%. The 5%, we would have to come up with $4,616,000 for a deductible.
Well, even on a good year, that's pretty crazy. I mean, geez,
That's
your
yeah,
whole fund
that's-
balance plus.
But our fund balance is now below 3 million.
Right. And what's the cost of 3 months of running?
3 months
Estimate?
operating,
Yeah.
it's about $1.5 million, so we need at least $3.5 million to cover 3 months operating experience.
It was a discussion back when we were talking all the other projects that about, I think we had said between $5 and $6 million is what we needed to consider your baseline for a healthy fund balance. And so that was the reason for that conversation back then.
But now we need closer to 9. Because if we have 1.5 for 3 months, that's 4.5 million. And then a 5% deductible, it's another 4.6, so a little over 9 million.
Well, we don't have it, so we know that. A loan would be inevitable.
I'm having a hard
A
time
loan
with
would
the
be
math.
inevitable. I mean, we'd have to get a loan.
What
Yeah,
does that,
one way or the other,
No
we
way we're
will be
gonna drop
getting a loan
4
to
million
do-
into the fund balance
yeah.
in the next 8 months.
and what would that look,
I'm sorry?
what would, getting a loan, what does that look like, interest rate wise? how do those numbers compare to
Well,
us
I have not
spending it?
gone that route before. In all my many years of being a business manager, we've never been in this position before. So I'm gonna have to do a lot of homework and figure that one out. I'm sorry.
It's okay. This is my everyday life. I understand completely.
We do have financial advisors, though, that would be willing to help us figure out something.
Okay.
And they reach out to us ever so often to see what we need. And when Harvey, we were recovering, they actually reached out to us and say, hey, do you need us to help raise some money? And at that point, between our insurance, they did very well by us. And then trying to recover some of that deductible from FEMA, we were still sitting really in a good position until now.
Are we closed out with FEMA? Have we received all that we're gonna receive to?
I'm sorry, Bonnie.
Oh, I said, have we closed out with FEMA? Have we received all that?
Got more information. They're wanting more information to close out. One of the processes that we had to refund money to them, now we're doing a closeout for another portion, and they gave me a 7-page list of everything that they want itemized. So I don't know when we're gonna finalize with them.
And how much is remaining for reimbursement back to the district from FEMA?
Right now, it's right at $1 million. We have some money still sitting in the disaster recovery checking. Last year, the auditors moved it to our fund, to our general fund. In this year's audit, they did not do that. When they saw that there's not a limit on how long it would be before FEMA would ask us for money back, so I think they just decided, let's leave the money there because it may not really belong to the district yet. So they left it. So once we're final, there's almost $1 million sitting there that I need to move into fund balance. Hopefully we'll get that taken care of this year, which that'll help soften some of this blow, but it's not enough to take care of everything.
That's $2 million sometime in the future.
Yeah.
Okay. Is it likely that it would all be resolved and finalized before the summer? Before we hit hurricane
Not
season?
before
No?
the summer.
Okay.
I doubt very seriously if it'll be. And now that I've said that, maybe we'll do it really fast. I really thought it was gonna be final before December last summer, and it's like they're in a stalled spot right now. I don't know if they're trying to play catch up with all the other districts. One thing though that I do need to say, and when we were talking about FEMA and Harvey, one of the conversations that the FEMA representatives said is that FEMA reimbursement on a building is a one-time thing. So say AC Blunt gets hit by another hurricane, whatever, FEMA, it would be more than likely we wouldn't get FEMA assistance reimbursement for anything for AC Blunt. The only thing we might get FEMA assistance with would be Falk Elementary and our new gym. And I don't know even that FEMA would help us with our baseball, softball fields as they are now with the improvements, because they've already paid us for the original facility. And that's one thing, the increase, they might reimburse us for all the improvements, like the new concession stand, that would probably be helped with.
They won't reimburse you again for deductible?
No. And they don't like to say that they're reimbursing us for deductible. It's, they will not duplicate payment of an already awarded benefit.
And that's like forever.
Which, yeah, and that's
Crazy.
forever, unless there has been significant improvement or a new structure. So so.
Okay, so am I hearing that you prefer the 3% versus the 5%?
Well,
Even though that's a lot more off the table?
well, depending how much you wanna take from fund balance, and, I mean, the one we can really afford better is option number one. That's, only 25 million, but it is a 5% deductible, but the premium is only a $200,000 increase over what we have now.
I have a question about the 25 million on the loss limit. So what happens if we, let's say, go with any of the options that has the 25 million and our losses are actually 30? How do we overcome the losses above the limits of the policy?
Yeah,
Another loan?
yeah.
I mean, or you don't repair something, I guess. Yeah, but then, when you say $25 million loss limit, that means the most that policy will pay out is
Yeah.
25.
Okay, that's what I thought. I just want to make sure, because that would leave us with some exposure if we,
And you're recommending 35 million? That's
We don't
anywhere
have
from 25 to 35.
Option.
50.
Get one, if you're interested. We have a few more days if we'd like to look at it. But I just would tend to side a little bit higher and go with 50 just to be safe side. Because, you made a valid point earlier, we've got $30 million more of assets that we're covering now. We know we had a $20 million loss last time. We're looking probably at a $35 million loss if we have the same type of thing.
and this is just for 1 year, correct? Okay, so,
Something we'd have to put budget out and then knowing that it could increase again, heaven forbid, but could increase again. This would be, because we basically had 3 years that it was really good for us, and now, unfortunately, it's catching up with us now.
Actually, for a little history lesson, prior to the 3-year policy, the premium was actually going down. I mean, if you can even imagine something going down. Finally got to
Those
it got
days.
to the point where the insurance company was like, we cannot keep lowering the premium. How about this premium, and we'll guarantee it for 3 years? So we're like, okay, we'll do that.
Yeah. Who only knew a few months later we
You
were
know,
gonna
everybody
really
asks,
like
well,
that.
what's gonna happen? I mean, once it goes up, it'll never go back down, right? Not necessarily. It's all dependent on God and these natural disasters, because if those will stop, and historically, if you look at 30 to 40 years of property insurance, when these cycles happen, the natural disasters tail off somewhat. I mean, we're always gonna have something, right? But not the $100 billion losses. When those start stopping, the people that, the insurance companies that pulled out over the last few years will now look at it and go, well, those guys are making a ton of money based on the price they're charging. We'll jump back in now, because we haven't had any losses in a few years, we'll do it. And they'll jump back in the market, it'll create competition, and then all the people that are in the market right now will have to start driving their prices. And that's how the cyclical market works and how it goes up and down.
Do we truly anticipate them to stop, though, with climate change and seems like our weather's getting more and more extreme?
When was the last time they had tornadoes in the Midwest in December?
Yeah,
That's unheard of.
it's crazy. Georgia got hit by tornadoes this
Last
year.
time Texas froze for 4 days or 5 days.
A long time.
Yeah. So if we, hear me out. So if we have to get a loan, I'm just trying to, I'm doing a lot of math in my head here. If we have to get a loan, what does that process look like for us? Timeline, like how quickly would that happen, and how much do we think we would even be able to get?
That I really need to talk to our financial advisors
Okay.
about.
Because that also, I mean, that makes
Well,
a difference.
regardless, we're gonna have to get a loan, even in the best case scenario.
Right.
The cheapest premium and the 5% or even 3%, it's,
Yeah.
we don't have it in the fund balance.
Right.
It seems like it's coming down to you pay up front or you take a chance and you're gonna pay on the backside. One way,
For another.
there's not enough money there right now. We've got to build that fund balance back up, but that's going to take time. Here we are, while we're in the midst of that, these premiums are being raised. It just depends on which direction you wanna come at it. Like Adele was saying, keep your money and then you hope you have enough to, on the backside, or can get the loan for it, so it's a tough decision because we don't have that crystal ball to look and see what's potentially going to happen this next year. But, that's why we wanted to have this special meeting, so you had time to take this in, ask the questions, hopefully we can get the answers for you, so that when we get to the February meeting, you know, we'll need you to choose one so that we can coverage.
During our loan process, in the past, have our lenders been more willing to say, give us a loan so that we could cover this, or give us a loan so that we could do repairs? Is that ever a...
See, we've never been in this position before, so I don't know how to answer you.
Because I'm just thinking of, from our own commercial properties, a loan for repairs versus a loan for our operation looks very different for us. And our lenders prefer it to be operations than betting on us to fix something, or knowing that there's going to be a gap or a delay in us being able to function. So I'm thinking of the loan process, because if it's going to happen either way, will it be easier to get the loan? You know, just I'm trying to think of all of our options, because when you're talking about a construction loan for a repair versus a operational loan, those are very, very different sentiments. They're going to look at things. For us, they look at things a little differently, what they're asking, how much money we have to have, how much you have to pay in to get that loan started. So there's a few little pieces there that I would be interested in, maybe. I know it's a lot, but we really won't know.
I can contact the financial advisor. The only type of business that I'm used to is when we've sold bonds.
Mm-hmm.
And that's even a different process, and
Different,
people, you know, look at us as an investment. So, but we've got A+ rating for, as you know, paying our bills. Is if we, you know, got the repairs done in a really timely manner, got the kids back in the buildings, back in school, that would help us be generating money. So I will call Dusty and ask him that question.
Okay.
Just gonna throw this out there, I don't know if it makes a difference or it's even an option. This premium is eligible for premium finance.
Premium what?
Finance. So we have companies that, not usually schools or counties and stuff, but the private industry, they go, well, I don't wanna pay all that right now and use all my cash. Well, we'll put it on a finance note, and finance it for the finance company. So, I don't know if that helps or not, that you don't have to come up with all
Well,
the
if
money
we
right
had
now.
our options so that 5% doesn't look so scary, that would help our
Who do you
decision.
guys use for some of your finance
We
companies?
just switched to, AFCO, I think it is, but we use PFS, Premium Finance. There's
I've heard
finance companies,
Premium.
that's all they do, is finance insurance. So we have a couple we use, so we can shop the rate between the two for finance.
So what could be financed, the premium or the deductible?
Premium.
The whole premium?
Not the deductible.
Okay,
That way you won't have no monthly payments.
okay.
Yeah, then you're paying interest on it,
Yeah.
of course, but
We might look at that
That's
next year.
it's an option if you're gonna pay interest on a loan. Either way, we're gonna have to pay interest, so.
I am concerned about just 25 million on the loss limit. And if there's members of the board who don't want to go as high as the 50, then I would ask that if you could provide us with maybe a 35 million, something in between, to see what that looks like on the premiums, and to do so at a 3% deductible and also a 5%.
And if we
So
could
we
get
can
that,
all
I
be
like
in
that the
consensus,
best.
the 25 million option.
That would make sure you have enough to cover the
The
deductible.
reason I asked is that way I can take it off here, so we're not
Yeah.
But it's
I
covered
think
damages.
25 would
It's just not gonna
be
cut
good.
it.
And then I can reduce it down and add those two in there and take.
And maybe blow up the numbers.
Yeah, because even,
Crystal, my secretary was out today because she got COVID last week, so she's like on her 5th day, and so this is why they don't let me do these types of things. I was in there trying to print all this out
I'm like,
myself today, and I'm like, oh, I guess that's gonna work. I
like I said, you know, like you said, we had like $20 million worth of damage during Hurricane Harvey, and we and just the price of everything's gone up. Plus, we got new buildings, so you know, and again, not probably going to have $50,000 worth of damage. Hopefully, you're betting everything no matter what. You know, like for your house or anything else, you just kind of you're speculating you don't have a crystal ball to see the future, so you're hoping you get enough to cover yourself and that, but you don't want too much because then you're just over covered. So, you know, I like your idea of the 35,000 because that's kind of a medium between 50 and 25. That if we had the same type of amount of damage that Hurricane Harvey come, we'd probably have up to $35 million worth of damage with the same damage.
I would think so.
Yeah.
25, I'm not comfortable with that at all.
Yeah.
To begin at 35 and go up to 50, that would be, I think, more realistic.
We could get that information, we put our board packets together and try to have those out to them Friday at noon is always our goal.
Yes.
So if we could have that, we could put that information in your board packet, so you'll see the 35 million option with the 50, and then like he has this, so you'll have that information. We'll try to get the loan information, the question that you've asked, have that in the packet, so that way you can read it and consider it over the weekend before you come into the next Monday board meeting, to have to make a decision. And then if you see you have more questions that you think of, even after tonight, you know, shoot it to us, and we'll try to gather all that information we can for you, because we know this is a tough decision, and that's why we wanted to have a pre-meeting to you, not just spring it on you and you have to make a decision.
If we could add a third piece, go ahead and do so, is the possibility of having that premium financed to see what that looks like with the charges.
Yes, I would have to run it on every option unless you tell me which one you kind of want to look at. I mean, I don't want to overload you with paperwork. I don't mind dealing with it.
Well, you're going to go for the $35 million deductible. Is that one option there? Yeah, just see what, because that kind of gives us a base idea of either or, and see, you know, that way. So, yeah, and that's what, that way it'll give us
Have
enough.
the 5 or the 3, right?
Yeah, so if you want me to run it on the $35 million option, I'll just run it on the 3% deductible and the 5% for the
Yeah.
35 million. So then you're just looking at 2 finance agreements.
Okay.
So,
Perfect.
is the full limits option off the table too?
Which one? The 92?
Option
4?
4.
Yeah, you don't even recommend that one,
No,
right? No.
I got eggs on that
I'm
one.
trying to
That's
take
for
stuff
us-
out so we can narrow our
yeah.
boxes down.
So that's a soft market option, not a hard market,
Yes.
correct?
Yes.
Okay.
And again, like I told them the other day, if the market goes back down, then of course it makes sense to go buy those limits, because what you'll see is from going to a 35 to a full limits, you're gonna be then, when the soft market started, we're talking $20,000-$30,000 premium at that point, so it's a no-brainer at that point.
Okay.
But in a hard market, this is what I recommend doing, buy the loss limit for what we think we need. And you're just gonna have to roll with it, you're gonna have to say our prayers during the summertime, and hope the market changes, and then we can, you know, be happy on insurance again.
And just,
The 75 million, you wanna take that one out too?
I would.
Okay, so we're gonna be looking at a 35 million and a $50 million option with a 3%, 5% on both.
Yes, sir.
right, and you said this doesn't include, like, flood insurance?
It does.
It does include our flood insurance? Okay, just making sure. And our fire is built into this as well? Okay,
Everything built into this policy other than earthquake.
we don't get those.
And the next to the last line, the PCAT, that's our liabilities insurance.
Okay.
That's a
The PPAC
3-year.
Casualty, that's the insurance for the board liability, so for y'all making these wonderful decisions. And, your school buses, your general liability, if somebody comes to the school, slips, falls, that kind of stuff.
And the cyber insurance, is that for if we're hacked?
Correct? That is what that is.
Okay.
And last year, the reason we don't have, it's not included last year is, again, the insurance carrier we're with, had all these bells and whistles built, and pulled it out this year, so we're gonna have to buy a standalone policy.
Okay. Have we ever had to use the cyber insurance?
Yeah.
Every time.
Yeah, I mean, that's becoming the newest.
It is the highest, loss generating product right now in the
Yes.
industry.
It is so expensive.
Auto insurance, cyber insurance. The losses in that are outstanding. It's gotten so bad that, they, you know, it was a little bit smaller school, but, some of these bigger schools,
covers, because we didn't really go over that line. Can you break
Yeah,
that
so in a
down with that?
nutshell, It covers ransomware, hacking. It covers if they take control of your system, we call that extortion in that policy. It also covers all the third-party crediting, monitoring, and notification that you're required to do for the federal statutes. And it also includes, more importantly, the firm that does the report.
Oh, that's perfect.
So, because I don't know about y'all, but I have no idea what I'm supposed to do or when you're supposed to do it. And so we have a claim, we turn it in, and they handle the process for you. So it's a good product.
Okay,
Sorry to be the bearer of bad news tonight.
thank you very much.
Just tell it like it is.
Making my way around South Texas.
Well, I think, yeah, every district's gonna, kind of be facing some of the same problems right now, so,
Oh, yeah, no, for sure. We've got, client-wise, we've got about 60 districts from South San Antonio around. And everybody on the coast right now renews on March 1st date. Everybody they all saw it back in September, and you guys are kind of hearing the bad news now in March. But that's not the first time we've heard that, right? Came by in December, kind of warned you. We don't like to spring it on people at the last minute.
Christmas present.
Yeah, Christmas.
Our flood zoning didn't change, did it? I know that FEMA came out with a more updated map a few months ago, and it changed a lot of the property types in our county, from one flood zone to a different one. So did ours by
I'll have to
chance
look. I mean,
change?
you have so many buildings, they're all different, so, I'll look, I'll let Cheryl know, whether or not they did, but yeah, the new systems, it's good and it's bad, it's good in the fact that you no longer need an elevation certificate. They use it based on GPS location.
Yeah.
Some of that stuff did change, so they will accept a flood zone, termination if it helps you, then it helps you, but if it doesn't help you, you don't have to submit it anymore, so
Okay.
that's kind of a good part about it.
That is good.
Yeah, some of them did change.
Okay, because I know that's been making a big difference in some of our quotes for some of our
Yeah,
clients.
flood's a big deal. I mean,
Yeah, it's gotten a little
those things
crazy.
that everybody kind of just threw in, it was cheap through the FEMA program, and now FEMA's realized over the last 10 years they've
Yeah.
lost billions of dollars by not charging them a premium for the program. But I'll quit talking about insurance now.
but anybody else,
Thank you so
anybody else got any
much.
any questions for you, Lise? Any more questions?
Any more recommendations?
No. You put my card in there, there's some
Okay.
contact information, everybody has a question.
Thank you.
Cool.
Thank you. Ms. Cook, you got anything else?
Sir, I think that's.
Well, with no further business for the board, I declare it's now 7:29. I declare this meeting adjourned.
Come on, I'm gonna stay a little longer.